and we're here with another episode. It's been quite a little while since we've done one of these, and I wanted to get back into this just because I feel like it's a good thing to do, to just keep doing things. And this episode, I wanted to talk about philosophy, or some of like the best life lessons we've come up with so far. And one of the ones that I've really appreciated is just the continual trying to do new things and just keeping that up, just kind of firing things at the wall and just keep going. It's just the best way to find out what's beneficial and what's worth like continuing to pursue. So yeah, I wanted to get back in the habit of doing the podcast, because I think just good things come when you just keep try new things, talk about new things, and go. Also, for a little bit of background, I had written this report, like a philosophical report based on some advice that I had found online, and shared it with Sammy and Kailey, who I'm with right now. Hello. And I wanted to touch back up on that, because I remember there was a lot of good advice in there and worth re-examining. So
yeah, I love that report.
That report was really good.
Changed my life.
Kudos to you, Ollie, for taking the time to do it. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, but it's crazy because like it was one of those things where listening to this guy, and his name's Naval Ravikant. He's like somewhat well known online now, but like I initially was listening to him and Joe Rogan on a podcast, and it was just one of those podcasts where like this guy's saying some like really interesting things and important things that would be worth really understanding. So it might be a good idea to take the time to like write down some notes from what he was saying, and then discuss it with you guys like we ended up doing.
Yeah, and I think you gave it to the rest of our family members, and if I remember correctly, everyone took something away from it, even if we took different things. There were pieces of it that are just so human and practical that anyone can relate to, or anyone I think can connect with on some level. It's really universal advice.
And you laid it out really simply in the report. Like I found it very easy read and easy to understand.
And broke it down into good categories.
So,
it was like the way he speaks to, like, shout out to Naval. A lot of these ideas were got from him, but the way he lays ideas out, just easy to interpret. But I wanted to talk about some of those ideas, and maybe not necessarily from this report that we're talking about, but just in general in the past years, what we've found to be some of the best philosophies to live by, or life lessons that have been like really beneficial.
Love it.
Over the years.
Yeah, even Ollie, when you said continuing to do new things or trying different things, that one I have a hard time with. I think it's a great one, but I don't think it's one I personally live by very well right now.
Because it's easy to just get comfortable doing what you're doing.
Exactly. And also feeling, I really get caught up in the idea that if I'm not the best, or if I don't become completely successful, I won't even do it.
Yeah.
So and it's not like it's not like I like having hobbies, but I get stuck in the mindset that if I am trying a new hobby, and a hobby in itself should just be something I do for fun, or just to try and learn something new. But I get stuck in the idea of, well, how can I make this a side hustle? How can I be really successful? And then as soon as I meet someone who does it better, I go, yeah, that's your thing. Never. Why did I even try that?
Mentality too, where I'm kind of like, what's the point? Like, what's the end game if I start doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in like an ideal scenario, you'd want to be surrounded by people that are at like every level of what you're doing. Yeah. Because you might start something, and then you look at, okay, who are the best in the business at this thing? And then you look at what they're doing, and then to you, you're like completely garbage.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you're in an environment where there's like, you can see everybody at each level, it's easier to like picture in your mind, I start here, and then I go to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And eventually you can level up to the person you're originally looking at.
Right. If you want to, or also not feel like a failure if you try something out and you don't really love it.
Yeah.
Unless you have, unless you're really trying to work towards a goal and you want to try to be dedicated to that and stick to it to get to that level, that's fine to keep persevering. But I sometimes struggle with, if I try something, like I'm thinking of an example. I wanted to try watercolor painting. Like I don't paint or do anything like that, but I was like, that'd be kind of cool. And I bought some watercolor paints and tried it once. And then I almost felt embarrassed that I even bought them, because I did it and was like, this looks stupid. I'm not going to be a watercolor like painter, even as a hobby. And then I felt like I almost felt like I shouldn't even say it out loud, because it was like, it almost wasn't, I don't know why I have that mindset that it's almost not even worth trying. If I'm not gonna, but what
about the process?
Yeah, exactly. What a bad attitude, because I enjoyed it. It was a relaxing experience.
But maybe did it have anything to do with like what your initial like dreams of when you picked up that watercolor painting set? Because like you might have been imagining, I'm gonna like draw this beautiful thing and then I'm gonna share it with everybody.
Yes.
And then when you start painting and you realize like, wow, I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
Your dream of having this like beautiful thing and sharing it with everybody goes out the window. And now you don't even want to be like, you don't want to be seen trying.
Well, that's it. I think there's something that, like you said it well, I think there's something vulnerable. It's very vulnerable to be seen trying.
Yeah.
And even if you almost feel like you have to explain, like I have to say like, yeah, like I just tried this, but like whatever, I don't know. I have to almost like downplay it, when I could have come, like you said to you guys, I tried watercolor and I was really interested in it and I really wanted to do it, and now I've decided not to, and somehow that doesn't, I don't know, I feel like I failed.
I feel like it's really important to be willing to be a fool, or like be willing to be bad.
Yes.
Like to give things a shot. And because a lot of the time you don't even really want to try because you're afraid that, this is gonna be bad. I'm gonna make a fool of myself.
Dare to be average.
Yeah, exactly.
I always like that quote, because it is sometimes like, for whatever reason, it's almost like harder to just like go out there and be average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In a weird way, it feels weird when you're just putting stuff out and it's just okay.
And I think so many people do have, they're entrepreneurs, or you see it more on social media, and people kind of, I don't know, you feel there's a little bit more of a pressure that if you start doing something like, I like crocheting, that's like, oh, are you going to sell those? Are you going to do something with those?
Yeah,
like, are you going to get better? Are you going to like make this or this? But the honest truth is, I just like doing the same stitch over and over and making the same blankets. Like, I don't want to do that other stuff. I don't want to.
The process itself is enjoyable for you.
I like just sitting and doing it.
Yeah. And the actual doing thing is like the key component, like actually taking action. Because like, you can come up with all these like theories and like philosophies in a sense of like what is good to do. And one of them being, it's good to try new things. But the most important thing is actually like putting yourself on the line and going to do it. Because I feel like the market for throwing out advice is like oversaturated these days.
Right.
Like you look on Instagram and everybody's trying to give somebody some advice.
Yeah.
And it's just it's like something I'm always trying to be cautious of, because like you don't want to be inauthentic by throwing out advice there and not actually following it yourself.
Right.
But it's one of those things that's like people find a lot of appeal in it, because it feels good to pretend like you know all the answers.
Yeah.
And then to share that with other people.
Well, I'll be the first to not back the try new things as being something I do. I'm not gonna I'll let, like, we can give that as
you do though, like
great advice, but I can't say that I do that to the fullest extent that I should. I'd like to, but I definitely get in my head too much and go, someone else is better at that already. Oh, there's already too many people doing that. Why bother?
Scary.
Yeah.
But you do try new things though. You're doing this podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
Doing this podcast.
Doing the pod. I did try to bake and cook more unique things this year, so that was something that I tried that I don't normally do.
Yeah, that's good, and you risk burning them and stuff, but at the end of the day, you'll just give us the burnt cookies anyway.
Yeah, there's always a...
Yeah, I mean, I know
whenever Kailey makes good cookies, she'll just eat them herself, but if they're ever burnt, they're just coming over our way.
That's only true sometimes. Sometimes it's true.
Yeah. But, yeah, on that same note of just like trying new things, I I remember on the first ever episode we did, I had something in mind of like, and I think I said it in the intro that, during this podcast, I might say some things that are wrong or embarrassing or whatever, or like you might be listening and thinking, oh, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And I was like, great, let me know. And
did anyone let you know?
Nah, yeah, you guys gotta let me know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even in saying that, it's like, it's easy to say all that, but the hardest part is to actually just keep continuing to try to say new things or talk about new things, and each time risking saying something stupid.
Yeah.
And on this like philosophy or life lessons podcast, what you really would want is that you listen to this podcast, or that like I listen to this podcast down the line and think, wow, so much of what I said was really stupid.
Right.
Because that's a sign of
improving.
Exactly. Like, it's actually nice sometimes when I'll look at things that I wrote a couple years ago and think, oh wow, that's like really obvious now, but I remember back then I thought that was something like brilliant.
Right.
And I feel like you want to continually have that happen over and over. Like, maybe if you're not cringing at what you did previously, you're not making enough progress. Because if you're like,
right,
if you're happy with what you thought was good years prior, did you even make any significant development?
Interesting. But what if you really like what you did in the past?
And that's the thing too. Like,
I'm gonna have to top that.
Yeah, because you don't want to just always hate your previous like work or whatever. So
yeah,
it's definitely not maybe not as simple as that, but just to like continue to just experiment, really. But it's always a fearful thing.
Yeah, but it's a good one. I was thinking of this one's so probably oversaid, but the live every day like it's your last. You know that one? And a little while ago I started to think of that in a different perspective, because whenever I thought of that one, I thought of how unrealistic it was. Like, live every day like it's your last, meaning you were supposed to, if you want to go skydiving or travel the world or quit your job or eat cake all day, like those are the things you should do to live out that mantra.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I started to think about it as in just the way that you treat people and your own behavior. And that, again, might seem really obvious to you, but I hadn't really thought of it that way. I was just skimmed over it as being kind of a silly thing.
Right.
But then when you think about it as your interactions and your relationships with other people, and if you do think of it like this might be the last interaction you have, or your last day, just at the end of the day being proud of your own actions and your behaviors in those relationships that you have. And it's impossible to always get it right because we're human, but I thought I liked that shift in perspective, and still to this day kind of reflect back on when I'm interacting with someone, just kind of like, what behaviors do I want to be proud of at the end of this day,
right,
in the event I don't speak to this person again, like, and not in like some like, I don't know, romanticized way where you're like saying good, you're telling the person they love you or whatever.
What are people gonna say about you at your funeral? Kind of thing? Or like, how are you gonna be thought about?
I guess, or just like more. Are you proud of the way you behaved? Like,
right?
Just I wouldn't want to interact with someone and be very selfish or cruel or mean, and just by having that idea in your head of live every day like it's your last and how you want to behave, you might be more inclined to then step back and use some of the better techniques to communicate or talk to someone or interact with them, just because you're kind of reflecting on, oh yeah, okay, this is, who knows what will happen in life, and kind of a reminder to be more rational, I guess. Like, it starts out as sounding so intense, and then use it.
It almost like, when I hear that, it almost like translates to me as just don't be lazy. Like, just
use the skills you have, like, to be a good person.
Yeah, do everything that you can and to the best of your ability.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I find it's crazy how fast, like, I'll just like forget all these lessons in a way. I don't know if you find it. Like, we haven't done the podcast in a while or talked about stuff like this. It's been a while since I read this report, and like I find if I'm not consistently having these conversations with you guys or like working on it, I'll definitely fall into like the old habits where I kind of stop exercising and stop meditating, and then you just get comfortable not trying new things or anything. And then it's like I almost need these constant reminders like all the time. Like,
yeah,
it's weird how like I'll read these things and I know them like somewhere in the back of my head, but I just like almost forget them, you know? Like it's a constant like work in progress.
And that's one of the things that I feel like recently learned or really started to appreciate is like the philosophy of not underestimating consistency. Like what can happen or what can develop out of consistently doing certain things. Just like don't underestimate the power that can come from consistently doing a certain habit, because it is like it requires a lot of patience and stuff sometimes for depending on the
it is habit, a lifelong there's like some acceptance too of acknowledging that all of these things to better yourself and are lifelong journeys. You're not gonna like get to the destination and then just be perfect at trying new things or all like that. So and there's I don't know.
Yeah, I find sometimes like when it was like some of this stuff was like new and it was like fun to do. Like you're like, oh, I'll do this and then everything will be good in my life. And then like a year goes by, 2 years go by, and then it's just I think it's just a challenge to keep the consistency. Yeah. Then you're like, oh, we're still doing this, okay.
But I think that's when you try new things. So if you really are like, oh, this is kind of cool, I'm gonna go for a run every morning at 6 a.m. And then a year later you're like, gotta go for that run at 6 a.m. But then maybe that's the trying new things. Maybe you're like, today I do like hill sprints, or tomorrow I run with a friend, and Thursdays I run with the dog or something, like whatever you add and change. And
but also I think unfortunately things just take like an unfortunate amount of time sometimes. Like even in that report, and like I've heard other people say this, is like it takes like 4 years to like really learn something. And it's like also just a coincidence that a lot of like university programs are 4 years long, but like to really be quite knowledgeable in a subject, give yourself like 4 years. Or I mean even like the report also had a component about how to become wealthy, and in that Naval's advice was it'll take decades. Right. And it's like nobody wants to hear that, because that's like, what do you mean decades? Like what am I supposed to do today and then tomorrow and the rest of the week? It's like when you're thinking on that huge time scale, it's just a daunting thing to be like, okay, I got to do this today and then for the next 10, 20 years. That's crazy. But
it's intimidating.
Yes.
Kinda.
But yeah, somehow you gotta just slowly chip away and not get overwhelmed by the like if you have a future goal to, let's say, become wealthy, to not get overwhelmed by that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, exactly. I like to have the mindset, like if you were to think about like something that's gonna take 10 years long or something, like if you're like, I want to become a super proficient engineer or something, you're like, that means I gotta study for like 10 years or whatever. Yeah. But like that time's gonna pass by anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like you're either gonna be alive 10 years from now and not know that stuff, or you're gonna have something to show for it. So it's like you could just be doing something while the time is passing that you want to be doing.
And it obviously matters like how much you're doing day to day. Like I just said, 4 years. That's kind of random. Like some people can learn the same thing as somebody else in a quarter of the time. Yeah. So the years doesn't really matter, but like just the point is, I guess
it just takes time.
Yeah. It's like there are certain people that get lucky and they are able to achieve like wealth or whatever their goal is very, very quickly. But for the vast majority of people, it's not going to happen like that. And especially just learning in general, it takes so long. Like I try to like read and like cram ideas in, and it's just like it's not something you can do in a day.
Like long term, do you find that these ideas don't stick as well as if you really took your time on a book?
Well, it's like if because for me, I think about all the like possible books out there and all the things that I would like to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to know them as soon as possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me read them as fast as I can. But it's like,
yeah.
I don't know. You're just absorbing facts, and the ones that really stick. I guess. I mean, the more is better, though. That's like we were saying at the beginning. It's just do things. If you read more, you do more. You go more places. The more you learn. So just continue to do.
The problem is, it's just really uncomfortable. Like learning is uncomfortable. I find like I started a new job, and like obviously like making mistakes and stuff, which is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like how do I expect to learn? Like I can't just expect to be there and just know what to do, everything. And
that's how I feel like I get in that headspace where I just go, oh, if I make one mistake on something, well, then I'm bad at it. I shouldn't have done this. But of course, it's not. It's so silly. Like I know, when I think about it, I go, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to make mistakes, but it's just it is uncomfortable.
But when you're there, you're like, I don't want to be making mistakes.
Yeah, I just want to. How did I not know that, or I should have known that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do need to like be willing to be a complete fool.
Yeah,
like,
I guess so.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Just like complete.
No problem.
Yeah.
But just in a lot of sense, and I feel like one of the best skills you can develop, if you are continually willing to be an absolute fool, is the skill of being able to start things from scratch, from level 0.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like eventually, if you've experimented enough trying brand new things, you'll start to develop your confidence in being able to do brand new things that you've never done before, because they're somewhat like translatable. It's like, oh, remember that one time where maybe I had no idea how to play guitar and then I figured it out, or maybe that time where, like, for me at least, like I started doing kickboxing, barely knew how to throw a punch or kick or whatever, and you see the progress. But I think what ends up happening, and ideally ends up happening, is that you develop your confidence in just being able to start at square one. It's like, I can start at square one at many things because I know I've done it before, but
confident in like being bad, or that it's okay. It's acceptable to like be the fool.
It is. And I'm sure if you started to write a list down of all the things that you tried new that you hadn't done prior, any person would have such a long list of things that they at one point were at square one, which now maybe just seems like second nature. And and it could be a little confidence boost activity right there. Just like write a few things down. You might be shocked at how many times you've started at square one and gotten far to a place where you're proud of your progress.
Yeah. And for some people, they might not really start at square one in a lot of things because it is intimidating.
Yeah.
Like you might just stick with what you know, and that's it. Like it's like, I want to do what I'm good at, and I don't want to do anything that I'm not so great at.
Yeah.
Like it's either I'm winning or I'm not playing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think you miss out on a lot of things if you have that attitude of not wanting to play unless you can win.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any things coming up, Sammy? Anything you want to try new? Try.
Well, we just booked a show with my new band Scorpion King, so
shout out.
We've never played live before. Mel's never sang on stage before, so it's all new, trying to get the band together, and
new.
That'll be a new experience, which is a little bit scary in a way, but I think it'll be fun because we've never played together as a band before, and the show's in like 5 weeks, so we gotta figure that out.
Wow, a little Christmas show?
Yeah, a New Year's Eve show.
Oh, okay.
Decent.
That's amazing.
Everyone go out.
Yeah, a little promo New Year's Eve at the Dominion Tavern.
Yeah.
Amazing. And Ollie?
But yeah, one sec. I was just thinking, sometimes I'll think to myself, like, what else am I going to do besides just, like, do things? You know what I mean? Like, as simple as that. It's just, like, what am I going to do? Just not try things? Like, you might as well just give things a shot. There's literally nothing else for you to do in the world besides just try to do things. And, like, it's like, what else am I going to do besides do everything that I possibly could do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
And that's like,
Yeah.
I was thinking about that like probably like a year ago or something. And I was thinking about the amount of time that I spend watching TV, because I was watching TV every night at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2-3 hours every night probably. That's the routine. And then I was like, what if I put like even just 1 hour of that time into something else that I did every day? And then I started making more music and like ended up making an album and working on all these videos.
That's
and
awesome.
I just realized that I like that a lot better. But you have like more time than you realize sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's time and time management, and also energy management. I find too, because some things can really drain you, and then like, you might have the time, but you're like, oh, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to do both energy management and time management. Yeah, and I think in general, because I did want to touch on this a little bit of just like why having some sort of guidelines and philosophy is beneficial at all. Like, why are we even talking about what the best life lessons are or philosophy? Because sometimes it can feel like, yeah, like I was saying, it's like an oversaturated market. Everybody's saying do this, all these like cliche things of like, I don't know, I can't even think of any, but like, you know what I mean? It's just like easy life, like hard life,
self-help,
all that stuff,
self-help Instagrams and stuff.
Yeah, it can be kind of cheesy sometimes, but also not having any guidelines or like values or philosophy to follow can end up in a bad place, which is why when I listened to this Naval guy talking about a lot of life advice and philosophy, it really resonated, because at the time I was kind of in a place where I was, you might consider like lost, like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know like who I am and all these things.
Yeah.
And it really is valuable to have some sort of guidelines as to like what the best way to approach life is, because otherwise you're kind of just stumbling around blindly. Like the world can be incredibly complicated and difficult to understand what the best thing to do is, or how to even make sense of things.
Yes.
And that's where people throughout all of history have always like fallen back on philosophies to try to make sense of things and try to live like a more satisfactory life. And so it can be like cheesy to follow these like self-help things, but at the same time there are certain ways of being that are just gonna lead to a better life in general, I think. And like, if you have and a lot of advice is hard to come by. Like, it's a lot of people don't know what they're doing or where to go, and there's not always a clear guidance for many people. Like, there's not always somebody there to tell you, oh, I think you should do this or you should do that.
I think most people
at some point
don't really
feel lost. And I was going to ask, you mentioned the importance of having values, and I've read it in a couple books, but how do you discover what your values are, do you think? What's the best or most efficient way to figure out what your values are?
Join our Patreon for $9.99.
Yeah, we'll tell you that.
Rhetorical question, we'll tell you.
Yeah.
But I think history is one of the best ways, just to
like your own personal history?
No.
Or you mean like world
just
history?
Like world history, because I think it's actually not like, it's not likely that you're going to be able to construct your own value system that's like your own personal thing that fits with the world and makes sense.
Right.
Like, I think a lot of the previous value systems throughout history are a good starter to like look at and which ones resonate with you, because like what human beings value has been crafted through thousands and thousands of years of evolution. You know what I mean? Like, even the fact that we value social connection and we value like status and things like that, you can't just really be like, hey, I'm just gonna value these things. It's a lot of this stuff we value is
pretty
kind
universal.
Of
we all have some like connection as to what we're looking for, which might, like, one of them being connection or some type of community, and overall probably health. Like those people want to feel, some stability in their health, and
Yeah, like
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
A lot of the most like fundamental values are maybe already picked for you in a sense. But then there's obviously like other surface level values.
Yeah,
of, like,
things that you might be.
Do I value clothes, or like do I value, I don't know, like things like that.
Do you value friendship or
that.
family or I don't know, nature, or like, because those things I think are more personal to maybe your personality or your interests. Like, but then maybe interests and values. You could say they're similar.
And even just like historically, what have the people that have withstood the test of time valued? Like, you know, like maybe not the people, but like the ideas and principles that have stood the test of time from like thousands of years ago, but we still find them valuable. Those are likely to be good ones. And I remember in this Naval report, he always put an emphasis on that, like being the older books are generally the better ones, because if people are still appreciating the values from a book that was written 1,000 years ago, odds are it has some valuable things.
Yeah.
Like, so like how to, and also like if it's an old problem, it's probably better to rely on some older knowledge. Like if you want some like specific solutions to some of your technology problems these days, obviously look at something that's very recent. But if you want something that's to solve your problem of like your existential crisis, that's something that people have been having for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So maybe like look back on some of the like ancient wisdom that still people are reading today because they still find valuable.
Yeah, that's so true. And even what, I think starting off this podcast talking about continuing to try new things is there's so much to that. So it was a great one to talk about, because I'm thinking even as you're talking about like something like an existential crisis is something that has been part of the human experience for so long, and trying something new, I'm also thinking relates to education and just trying to learn new things all the time. Like, just always trying to expand the knowledge you have and grow. And like you said, if you look back and reflect on things maybe you said or the way you thought about something a few years ago, it's satisfying to think, wow, I challenged myself in trying to learn something new, or educating myself on something, and seeing that is it's good. Like, education is always good. I think it's one of the most powerful things in the world is knowledge.
Yeah, just being like a continual learner.
Yeah.
And like a lot of these things, I don't know about you guys, you find like they seem like I don't know, like cheesy, or maybe this is like some weird internal thing that I have against learning, or like you just it's like or learning, or not even just learning, but just like doing things that are actually good for you.
Yeah.
It's like
I get that
there's always some sort of resistance to being like, oh, that's like lame, you know what I mean? But a lot of
like, what do you mean? Give me an example. I don't know what you mean.
I just like, you hear people being like, oh, you should learn. It's like,
I'm a lifelong learner.
That's what I always think about. Like, if I watch like a YouTube video, or even listening to like a self-help podcast, I always think back to like this old it was like a Goofy cartoon, where he's like trying to do exercise stuff, and he gets a tape, and it's like how to be a better Goofy. And it's like step 1, it's like do this, and he starts trying to work out and stuff. But I don't know why I'm always reminded about that and how silly that it was. And like and then it makes me feel silly, like I'm just trying to like do some sort of quick fix or something, listening to like a tape to try and be a better Goofy.
I think maybe what's like deeply buried in it is the fact that if you are appreciating life advice, that means that you feel like you need it. And you don't want to be in that position of being like, oh no, like I actually need or want something to help me.
Right.
Like you don't want to be
like the vulnerability of,
it might have an
admitting
aspect
that
of vulnerability. Like you don't want to be like, oh, I actually am kind of not content with my health, so I'm trying to get healthier. Or like you don't want to be in that position where you have to, like, I guess it implies that not everything's up to the way you want it to be.
Yeah.
Like it's like,
and also I feel like there's so many like kind of self-help like scams out there in a certain
Yeah,
way
that's
that are
definitely
just
part
like
of it too.
This
kind
is
of
the
BS,
secret to
where it's like sometimes when I'll throw on like a podcast or something that's talking about self-help, I almost feel like they're scamming me or something. Like I'm
some of them are, for
cautious of it.
sure.
I'm like skeptical. I'm like, is this even real information? And then that's also like another reason I just kind of feel.
Well, and you also had a bad experience with that guy on the plane who tried to get you with his.
Brandon. Oh no, won't say his name.
Yeah. He'll get a lot of followers if you shout him out.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of what we want. But yeah, I know there's a lot of scammers out there. But the thing is, I think why it's so appealing, and this is like hopefully a good transition into another one of the like lessons from that book. The lesson being that life is in a lot of ways a single player game, and I want to explain that because that like can get misinterpreted. But I think a lot of what we do is to try to get like external validation, and people don't like to do things unless they can show other people that they're doing them. You know what I mean? Like there's like people desperately want others to see the things that they're doing, and often don't do things just for the value in themselves. Like if you're gonna read or if you're gonna study, you also got to take a snap and put that on your story that you're studying. Or if you're gonna work out, you got to take a picture out. It's like it's difficult sometimes, I feel like, to do things for the value in and of themselves without trying to get the approval or admiration of other people.
Yeah.
But is it so bad to because I feel like a lot of people, why they're working out is to think about like that body that they could get like a couple months down the line.
Or sometimes I like
and then
when
they think about people seeing that body.
That's true. Or I sometimes like when people post their work, like specifically workouts on Instagram, because then I see that and go, I should be working out right now. Like, thanks for the motivation. I'm gonna go. Or like recently someone on my Instagram, they'll post that they're running like late at night. They go for night runs. And I thought that was so admirable. I was like, that's sick. Like I get so sleepy by 9 p.m., but good for you. And like, you know, maybe one night I didn't go for a run, so I don't know how helpful this is, but I just was like, you know what? That's pretty cool. I feel a little bit motivated to maybe get out there or at least work out tonight.
Yeah, and I actually don't think it's necessarily all bad to want to share the things that you're doing with other people, because that is like a lot of what motivates people is like, and I feel like that has been for all of human history really. It's like if you found some new info, you share with the squad or whatever. So like I think that is like innate in people, but I feel like it'd be beneficial for people to try to understand their own motivations better. Is like, am I really trying to get this new car so that I can drive this car because I really like that model
to
of
work
car
on time,
or is it that I want to show other people that I have this car, or is it am I really about to step out and go work out because I want to do the workout, or do I also want to end up being able to post that picture at the end of it? And maybe you do want to post that picture, and I don't know if that's necessarily like
sometimes
a bad
it's a little
thing.
Reward for you.
Yeah.
But
you're right. The motive, like I'm thinking of my watercolor. Was I wanting to do watercolor so I could, you know, show over my watercolor, or did I want to do watercolor? But the problem is when you try something new.
Post a picture of your watercolors or after your workout or something, and then you find that nobody likes it, and then you don't have that external validation. Like,
right. If
you
you
don't
go
get
south
enough
where
likes,
you don't,
then you go, I'm not doing that anymore.
That's true. It
Nobody
needs to
liked
come
it,
from
even
within.
though that potentially, like, you probably felt good yourself when you were posting it.
Yeah.
But now you're not proud of it because nobody else seemed to like it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and even like on this podcast, it's like, what about me right now? Like, can I not just have a conversation with you guys without having to record it and share it with everybody else?
Yeah.
It's like, because that is, in a sense, an example of it.
Yeah, it's true.
But there are added challenges that I appreciate in having to publish it. So that in that sense, like, maybe I have an argument for it, but it's like, what do you? I don't know. I think in some ways, actually, it gets a bad rap of like people get a bad rap when of just sharing things, like oh, you just want approval or whatever. But at the same time, it's like things are meant to be shared. Like
why not?
I think it all really comes back to is like understanding your own motivations, because sometimes you might not even realize that the reason you truly are doing the water painting is because you just want other people to look at your painting and be like, and give you 10,000 comments on it and 30,000 likes.
Oh, that'd be impressive.
but
maybe I'll aim for that.
So then when you end up having a bad painting, you might even feel upset about it and not even entirely know why.
Yeah.
Like unconsciously you're like, oh, I wanted everybody to love this. But consciously you're like, I just feel like garbage because it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But you didn't realize your motivation from the beginning was that your motivation was not to just become a absolute creative water painter,
artist.
And I don't mean you in your situation exactly, but like
no,
just
you're right.
Understanding yourself better is probably another one. I think it's just like, where am I? What am I really wanting here? Like I don't want to deceive myself and pretend like I'm doing this.
Be truthful with yourself
for the thing itself. Because in reality, I do want the other things that maybe I feel bad about admitting.
Yeah, it's possible that when we started training for our half marathon, Ollie, a couple of years ago, I started that kind of thinking, wow, that'd be pretty cool to like have run a half marathon.
I want that pic at the end.
But kind of like, I want that pic, and also to, share with people like running a half marathon soon. And then once I started training for it, that shifted. Maybe that was a good motivator, like kind of vain motivator in the beginning. And then it shifted once I started running. I genuinely enjoyed it, and I was very proud just internally of my accomplishment. But it may have started in vain.
Yeah. And maybe it can be both. Like you, like what do you like we'll talk about this, but it's like, what do you want people to do? To just do everything in silence and never, like, it's like you're low key like a crazy Iron Man runner, but we don't know anything about it. It's like you didn't tell us.
Yeah,
at
what point is like humbleness? Just you don't need, like, humbleness is too much. Like you don't need to be humble about, so humble about everything. Like at some point you can go, hey, I'm super proud of this and I want to tell you all about it.
I think a lot of the things that I do with like music and video, it's kind of like you just mentioned with like, I'll almost like picture that end product where you can like post it or like share it with somebody. Yeah. And like the thing is that's a motivation that actually makes me get things done. Yeah. Because I think about posting it.
Yeah. And I don't think it's like, that's like an evil motivation. No. I think we might even give ourselves a hard time when we see ourselves, when we see that being our motivation. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, like, people are like deeply social through thousands and thousands of years.
So true.
Is what we would want to do is share things with others. Yeah. And so, now we do it a lot.
In a different capacity, which maybe can get muddled. Like it gets a little muddy messy, as to
because you start to do things for only that purpose. Like
the problem is when you're like based on what other people say or comment about it, if that's affecting how you feel about your accomplishment. Yeah. Like ideally, you want to post it and then I'll just kind of like be solid internally about what you've achieved. Yeah. And it's like if people don't like it and whatever, you don't get any likes.
Asking making sure, like checking in with yourself and be like, okay, where's this motivation coming from still? Is it kind of true to myself and am I enjoying the process and all that? And then like if you're questioning that.
Yeah. Because sometimes I feel like people can start to go places, eat certain things and do certain activities just because they want other people to see that. Mm-hmm. Like they'll be like, oh, I'm going to order this so I can take that picture and it'll hopefully look good. Or I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to go to this bar and get a pic because it's that bar that people go to. And
that's the thing. It is like social media is like building your identity basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But however you want it. If it's satisfying for you to do that, like I think if it's negatively impacting your life, then sure. But if you kind of going to those places to get the pic, but in the process you like have a nice time out, or you get to try the food you hadn't tried, and then in the process you're enjoying yourself still and not like feeling unsatisfied at the end of the night, then that's okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things that are like deeply going to improve the quality of your life are things that aren't going to be seen by others, or aren't going to be recognizable by external things. Like, for an example, I think meditation is one of the best things you could do for yourself.
Yes.
But that's something you can't. Well, you hopefully aren't sharing while you're doing it.
Post a photo.
If you are doing it, you're probably doing
closed,
it wrong.
Yeah.
Deep meditation. Right
filming
now.
yourself meditate or whatever. But like, yeah, it's things like that. Like the real like gains are probably going to come from things that you are doing in silence, kind of. Like I think that's a Lil Wayne song, "Real G's Move in Silence."
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Lil Wayne. Hopefully I didn't mess that up.
He's full of wisdom, that Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
Nice. That's okay. That's true. What other philosophy?
One thing that I really like, and it's like a meditation thing, but ever since I found it, I've been trying to use it as much as possible, and I try to remind myself of it all the time, which is just begin again. And if you guys have done that Sam Harris meditation, you probably have had him tell this to you whenever you get lost in thought, is just begin again. And I always try to remind myself that whenever I've, like, according to my own standards, made some mistake or done something that was like embarrassing, it's just begin again. Or you had a bad day, begin again the next day. If you had a bad 5 minutes, you made some like comment that you're like, oh, that was stupid. Just begin again right now. If you had a bad hour, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, you have now. Now you can reset. Now you can start. Just keep starting over. Just start again.
Love it.
And
that's a great one.
That is a great one.
Especially when you feel like you've become like a certain type of person or something. And then you kind of think about that begin again like mindset, and it's like you can really, there's really no rules or anything stopping you from
kind of
just
like a weight lifted off your shoulders when you take on that
different
mindset. Just begin again. I'm just present. Here I am, like starting over. I like it.
Yeah, no, that one's massive. But also, like, along those lines is don't be so reactive or judgmental, and that's another meditation thing, really. Because even with the begin again thing, a lot of time you might tell yourself, well, I'm gonna begin again because that was some stupid thing I did. But like, a lot of what happens, we like have an immediate tendency to judge everything that we do, or everything that we think even goes through a filter of judgment and reactivity. Like, even like the whole like human mind really is like a interpretation machine. And I feel like just even understanding that can help to hopefully have more beneficial interpretations. Like, every experience that we ever have first goes through the interpretation filter that is our own mind. So like, you put 1 million people through the exact same experience, and everybody interprets everything differently. And I think even just knowing that there's an infinite amount of interpretations possible for every single experience, that means that next time I go through an experience and I'm interpreting it negatively, just to remember, wait a sec, there's a like infinite amount of ways of looking at this thing, and maybe the way I'm looking at it right now isn't the best possible way. So just trying to dig for the more optimistic and realistic. You don't want to go like delusional and just believe some nonsense, but like realistic but also optimistic, and knowing that there's an infinite possible interpretations. Odds are the one you're currently thinking of is not the best.
So true.
So it's just like, there's always some
that one is a
positive spin on it.
Lifelong practice, though. That's not an easy one.
That's a tough one.
That meditation definitely, like, that's a kind of a good technique to help with that. But it's so easy to just,
I find it hard to like
you
genuinely make myself believe a different like interpret a situation differently once I've already interpreted it one way.
Like we talked about those pathways, like the well taken meadow path, and trying to recreate new connections in the brain. Like if you all you can't help but you miss your bus and you instantly feel annoyed, and then to like try really hard to be like it's all right, or like just kind of like that was annoying, but we don't have to simmer here in that anger.
Like I'll miss the bus and then I'll try and be like, well now I get to enjoy the comfort of the Uber ride or something. But then I'm just lying to myself. That was bad that I missed the bus.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that recently, of just like, why is it so hard to
retrain?
Or even just be like grateful for other things, because like we can like people can always be like, it could be worse, and it's like
I don't like that. I don't like when people say that.
I think because a lot of time and a lot of time it is true, and I feel like there is a good lesson in the it could be worse thing, but I think it's because the it could be worse is so far removed from where we actually are at that we don't even really consider it. Like it's hard to feel to genuinely feel what it would be like to be worse when you're not actually there. So it's difficult to be grateful for, like, let's say, because it can always be worse. Like really every situation it could always be worse.
It can be worse, but it's hard. Like I'm thinking a really trivial example. If I spilt a bag of flour on my kitchen floor, that is not even a bad thing to have happened. That's like, it's a mess and it has to be cleaned up, but the could be worse that's pretty much at the bottom of the list of bad things that can happen to someone. That's such
the top.
There's so many things that go below that, and yet at the same time, if I spill that flour on the floor and it's like, oh my gosh, now I have to clean that up, it's like 10 minutes or whatever, the last thing I want someone to say is it could be worse, or like thank goodness it wasn't this, or even something more relatable, like if you're like, well, thank gosh it wasn't your like expensive quinoa or something, then it's like I don't want to hear that. I don't want like
expensive quinoa must be nice.
Could be a lot worse than that. Lucky you got quinoa.
No, but you know what I mean, like that mentality I don't find in the moment helpful. I don't find that after I can be grateful that I have a home and a kitchen floor with which I can spill stuff on, and I can acknowledge the perspective of that stuff, but I have a hard time just going like, no worries.
I know, because that's the thing too, because if I was the person, like you spill like the stuff and you're like, wow, I'm so happy I have this floor so I can spill everything on it, like you feel so foolishly optimistic, you know. I'm like, this is like not this is weird.
I guess we're kind of straying from the idea, but I guess the idea is that if I spill the flour on the floor, I can take a moment to acknowledge that that's super annoying and I can be irritated by that. And then I can acknowledge that I don't have to stick with that thought that came to mind, which is irritability, and that this is a real bother. And part of the meditation practice, and part of kind of retraining your thoughts and having some regulation is saying, okay, well, it has to be cleaned up, and it's going to be cleaned up, so there's no point continuing to have these really, nasty thoughts about the flour on the floor. I can just clean it up, and maybe while I do it, I put on my favorite song, and kind of, just change the way you thought about that situation. And then when someone comes home, or like, your friend or whatever comes over, doesn't have to be what you talk about, like dwelling on it. It would be then like, I'm not even going to bring up the flour thing. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
Whereas I might be tempted to be like, let me complain about stuff or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, the flower thing is bad though. That's rough. But it doesn't actually get much worse than that.
No, you know what? Well,
I'm serious. That sucks. You know how like flour sticks to everything. You gotta black. That's
yeah. Well, it isn't great. Thank you for your empathy.
But I think we have a tough time conceptualizing worse. Like we have a tough time picturing in our mind what worse actually is. And I think that's what makes it difficult to feel like not as bad about the bad we're currently considering, is because we can't even genuinely picture what worse is. And the best image that we the best example of worse that actually makes us feel grateful is, I feel like, things that we've previously experienced that have been worse. So then when we're going through something bad, we can actually have a memory to pull from, and that memory is a lot more realistic than just trying to imagine some random thing that's been worse, because we have an example from our life that actually was worse.
Yeah.
So it's easier to feel grateful when you have something like a little more concrete to fall back on, of like, oh no, it actually could be worse because it was worse before.
Yeah.
But if you never had any like really bad experiences, then it's just like someone says it could be worse. You're like, yeah, whatever. It's like, because you can't even really picture what worse is, because,
or if they say something from their experience and you're like, that's not, I don't know. It is most helpful to think of something in your own life. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it's difficult to like really believe like you can hear about like, oh, Holocaust, concentration camps, but like we're so far removed from that you can't even really like deeply connect with that idea of like, oh, it could be worse. You could be getting gassed. It's like you try to picture that, it just doesn't really work, because it's just you have no idea what that's actually like. It's just too far away.
Yeah, you haven't experienced it, so like you can't draw on that emotion, like the emotions that would come along with that in the same way.
Yeah, it's just impossible to really connect with, because it's just it's so far from anything you actually have experienced.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys also find, when, just on the note of talking about being grateful, I never really liked when you'd say, oh, I'm so grateful for my health, I'm so grateful for the roof over my head, because heaven forbid something were to happen.
Yeah, those are some good go-tos at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, like they're fine, and those are things that
when people steal yours, though, it sucks.
Yeah,
I know, when you're
you have to go around and you say one. But those are fine, and certainly things to acknowledge. But then I found it kind of like hard, because heaven forbid something did happen to my health, and then I would go, like, I don't know, you feel funny about that. And so I heard someone word it differently, and they said, if you don't like really connect with that idea of like being grateful for these like kind of grander parts of your life, talk about just like in the moment and how you feel. So like, I'm really grateful to be here with you guys right now. So even if that changes, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is very specific and unique to right now. We'll never be here on the 21st of November, the three of us again, 2021. So that's not something, whereas like if I say my health, it's like my health will change at some point in my life. And so I don't know.
I like that mentality too. And I try to use that a lot for the being grateful thing, where it's like a lot of these situations will never happen again. And it kind of helps to be present.
Yeah. Like, I'm really grateful that I'm walking in the woods right now and the sun is shining. I'm really grateful that I, have my two legs to walk on. Cause then I feel like again, heaven forbid something were to happen, it almost, you're like, I'm so grateful that if that something were to happen, I'd be so upset. And it's like, I feel like there's more value in being grateful for your present moment.
Right. Yeah,
than
everything will have a last time, and you never know when that last
like, what if
come.
my, like, something happens to my house and I don't have a roof over my head? Yes, I was so grateful for it, but it almost is like, seems unhelpful to then be reminded that like, oh, what if something happens to my house, opposed to being like, I'm so happy right now that I'm drinking tea in my living room. Then that moment is just there. It's a moment I can appreciate. Yeah,
you never know when your last tea will be. Like, your next tea could be your last. Or like, this could be the last podcast. This could be the last time I drink a soda water. Like, you never know. There's always going to be some sort of last thing. The final time I went skiing, the final time I played soccer. But you never know when that one's going to be. Yeah. And just thinking this one could be the last one, I guess.
And things do get worse. I know we don't like to talk about this because we were just saying you don't like to hear things get worse. But if let's say you're in a moment that you're standing out in the rain at the bus stop that you don't like, but it's like potentially that bus stop could be gone tomorrow, or something, terrible goes wrong in your life. Yeah. And while you're standing there, if you think kind of like about that, maybe that's the last time that you're in that situation, then maybe you can appreciate it a little bit more. Yeah. In a certain way.
When I played soccer, I loved it so much. That would have been the first thing on my list of like, I'm so grateful. I get to play soccer. And then when I injured myself and couldn't play anymore, I don't know. I feel like it would have been more beneficial to be grateful for like that game I play, like, in the moment in the game being like, wow, I'm so grateful I got to play that game that day. Opposed to just, I'm grateful for soccer, and then I don't have it anymore, and then it's like, oh, well, that really sucks. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm articulating this point very well. I had read something that someone wrote about this, kind of switching the way you say you're grateful about things and being more present at the moment. And they said it really, or they wrote it really well. I don't know if it's getting across the way I want it to.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And one thing too, I feel like when it comes to like life advice and philosophy in general, is that like the ones that you feel like you need are gonna really stick out to you. Like, let's say I had a list of 10 general recommendations for life.
Yeah.
If I read off the list of 10, maybe number 5 and number 8 really stood out to you, Kailey, but number 3 and number 7 got you, Sammy, and I really like number 1 and number 2 or whatever. It's like the things that you're really gonna appreciate are just gonna like click for you for whatever reason. It's like you consciously probably can't even explain it. It's like the unconscious intelligence is just like appreciates whatever it was that was just said, and you don't know exactly why, but it's like I could use that number 5 and number 7. I like those ones. You can't explain exactly why, but it's like those ones are great, and I really like those. Like for you, that gratitude one, like whoever said it to when you were listening to that podcast, it really stuck to you because you're like, oh, I could use that. I could really like that. Whereas 1,000 people could listen to it, and not everybody's going to get that from that exact thing that
and
she
I've
said.
listened to a few podcasts on the same topic, and some of them I haven't related to at all, and then other ones I've just the way people say it really is dependent on the delivery, or some pieces of advice or life philosophy. I've had those moments where I'm like, oh, I get that now. Oh, wow. In this point in my life, that's so relatable and really important to me. And then it kind of passes, and it's kind of neat because different things, you might have heard something 5 years ago and it comes back. And at that point in your life, you go, oh my gosh, I needed to hear that. But 5 years ago, you didn't even think about it. Just depending on where you're at or what's going on in your life, which is part of the learning, like always kind of coming back to where you continuing to learn and educate yourself because.
Do you guys like that the life's a single player game thing? Because I did bring that up, and I was like, oh, we'll explain that. I don't want it to be misunderstood.
When I heard
that
for the first time, it really resonated with me.
Yeah,
a lot. The kind of like nobody else is gonna save you, kind of thing. Yeah, and like basically all your problems, like at the end of the day, it's going on in your own head, and it's just you who's in control of that.
Yeah, like wherever you are, like externally, the real scorecards are inside of you. Like you can go through the same experience as 1,000 other people, and you're all gonna come out with a different internal experience of that external experience. Let's say you all go to a trip to Cuba or whatever, and then 1,000 you come home. You all did the same things, ate the same food, but some of you were happy about it, some of you were miserable. It's like the scorecard isn't, oh, I went on this vacation and I ate this food and I went on this like extravaganza or whatever they call those things. Excursion, yeah. Yeah, it's like it's not like those aren't the real scorecards as to how satisfying was your experience, because everybody could do those exact same things, but not everybody internally felt great about it. Yeah. So the real scorecards are inside.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, thinking of it from that perspective, I feel like it just it makes you think, what am I really trying to get out of this? Does it matter if this is looks good externally, or do I really want to just focus on what is good internally?
Yeah, and then it can kind of be freeing to think about how you basically have control over that experience. Yeah, to some, for definitely for some degree, because it's all like an interpretation, like we're saying.
Interpretation.
But that one definitely can. I feel like some people can hear that life's a single player game and feel weird about it. Because I remember we were discussing that, and I remember somebody was like, "Oh, don't. That's like a cold way to look at life." But that's not the idea that like you shut off everybody else and
that you should be
you're not
alone and doing
with,
everything.
Yeah, it's not what it's about. It's more just like,
I think I maybe misinterpreted originally. I think that was me that maybe said all that, but I understand it. I'm glad you guys have kind of talked a little bit more about it, because
yeah,
I agree. You kind of are responsible for what happens in your life.
Yeah. Another one too that I wanted to touch on was just like be good to yourself. And this one's from Theo Vaughn, comedian Theo Vaughn. And I'm gonna have his shirt in I don't know, Benji got it for me for my birthday, a shirt that just says be good to yourself.
Nice.
Shout out to Ollie's birthday.
And the reason
Thursday.
I wanted that shirt is I like that motto. It's just like, it's so simple, but it's like, it's so true. It's just like, be good to yourself.
Yeah, you're right. Like, be kind to yourself. Yeah. Kind of, like, so
treat yourself.
That I was gonna say. That could be interpreted as like, treat yourself like with material items, but it probably just means like in like whatever you do.
Yeah, that's true, because everybody's gonna have a different idea of what being good to themselves means.
Yeah, that's true. It's so personal. If you ask like 100 people, everyone would write down something different as to what would be being good to themselves.
Oh yeah, that's really true. I had one in my mind that was like, oh, this is what it means to be good to somebody's self. But I'm curious what you guys would both have. Like, let's say I said, Sammy, be good to yourself, or Kailey, be good to yourself. Like, what does that mean you're doing?
What comes to mind for me is like how I would talk to myself in my own head.
Yeah.
Like, where I don't, like, if I make a mistake or something and I beat myself up all day, like mentally, or if I can talk to myself like I would talk to like one of my friends or something. Yeah, like, that's okay, everyone makes mistakes kind of thing. Right. That's the kind of be good to myself that I think about.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Everybody's usually your harshest critic is you. Like, nobody else is gonna critique you as hard as you do. Yeah,
exactly. That's the thing. Like, because sometimes if you can take the thoughts you have and the way you're thinking about yourself and imagine saying that out loud to somebody else, it sounds like really weird and mean and rude.
Yeah.
Like, I would never talk to somebody like that, and it's weird I talk to myself like that.
And even on like the begin again thing, it's like, it's so much easier to tell somebody else like, oh, it's okay, like, you'll get them next time or whatever. Yeah, it's exactly. Like, but to tell yourself, I'll get them next time, it's like, you don't, it doesn't stick as much usually. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Is just try not to be so judgmental of yourself, because I have that thing too, where like almost I'm always evaluating every like thought that I have almost. Yeah, like you're evaluating like, oh, that was a good thought. Like, they would like,
you're being
like
sarcastic. You're like, nice one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just trolling yourself. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just like, and it's like, I'll even like notice like the ego like feels good or bad, like depending on what I was thinking. It's like you have a thought and I'm like, oh, that's a good one, that's like good, or you have another one, it's like, oh, as if you're thinking that. I don't know, it's just like
and allowing yourself to feel good when it does feel good, because I don't know if you guys get this, but sometimes when I'm feeling good, it feels like I'll like take myself down. I'll be like, no, like, now we have to work harder or something, or like I shouldn't be feeling like everything's fine. If it's almost like uncomfortable for me to just be feeling like everything's good. Yeah. And I try and bring myself back down, and I don't know.
Yeah. I'll definitely feel that, where like you feel like you're inflating yourself by telling yourself what you just did was so good.
Yeah, like I don't allow myself to be like just,
if you made music and you were like, wow, that's actually really good,
of, like just being okay with what I'm doing.
Yes.
What about you, Kailey? If someone says be good to yourself,
be good to yourself,
I picture you with like, I don't know, some tea and some socks and
actually I was also picturing a really nice scenario, or going for a walk. Like, I love walking, so maybe like a nice walk would be me being good to myself, treating myself after a long day or something. And
that's
sometimes I don't think I'm hard enough on myself, So I relate to what you guys say about being your your harshest critic, but at the same time, sometimes I think I'm too easy on me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's good though. Like,
I'm
So
like
maybe
very
you wanna,
forgiving of myself.
maybe you can be better to yourself by pushing yourself harder.
Yeah, maybe I
in a
need to
way.
be more like because I mean I think you guys could probably attest this. I generally am not very hard on other people. I'm pretty like accepting of people and kind to others. I feel like I'm like that with myself. I'm just like, well, that's okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not all the time,
Well,
but
that's
like,
a good. I feel like you've made it. You already.
yeah,
I
you're
did it.
enlightened. You
I don't
figured
know.
it
Like
out.
sometimes for sure, like the watercolor, you know, like those things, trying new things. But then I don't know. I'm also like, it's okay.
Right.
Forget
Right.
the watercolor.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Well, that's a good attitude.
Yeah, I
I feel
don't.
like
yeah,
I'd
that
like
might
to
not
have
be
that
bad.
attitude.
I don't
Just,
know.
like,
But then
forgive
sometimes
yourself
I think I
for-
could push myself harder. Like I'm saying, I don't try new things because I go, well, if I'm not at the top or if I won't be really good at it, I won't try. But it's not like I'm like, Kailey, you idiot. Like, you should be better. I'm just like, well, I'm not good at that. On to the next. And then I just am optimistic about the next artistic thing I try. And then go, bad. Try the next one.
Yeah, that one's like that one I feel like relates to just like being competitive, and I want to do an entire podcast on competition because at least for me, I feel like it's a huge aspect of
Yeah.
my
But I
life.
am competitive
But-
as well. We'll have to, we can talk about it in that episode because there's definitely a lot of layers to.
Yeah, competition and the desire to feel important. Like everybody has that, but like like you want to feel important, but that causes a lot of people psychological trouble. I feel like
Oh,
they're just always wanting to feel important and like special.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because everybody feels that and they always want that, but in some ways the most at peace you're going to be is if you can just be like, I don't need any of that.
Yeah, like
But
kind of like
it's
Sammy's saying, like
difficult.
average, like being average, how hard being average is.
Dare
Probably
to be
ties
average.
into competitiveness as well because
Yeah,
you're just being you. Like you're just living because we can't 100% of the time in our life.
But that sounds like a really interesting podcast
Wow.
because that resonates with me too. I feel like a lot of my decisions in life are driven like maybe in an unhealthy way by competition and desire to be important.
Yeah, I was reflecting on that one. I'm like, that one's crazy how much of a drive that is.
Mm-hmm.
Is like desire to like stand out or do something special or like all that stuff. It and the discomfort you feel when you feel as if you're not doing anything unique or special.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that one's definitely could get pretty deep on. And I wanted to think about that one some more. But to get back to the be good to yourself thing, for me, mine's pretty similar to you, Kailey, of just like simply like take care of yourself as if like you're like what is like a human need, like just eat well, like take care of your health is what it primarily means for me.
Yeah.
Mental health, physical health, because when those things go down, everything really suffers. Like it's hard to do what we were saying at the beginning of the podcast, which is do as much as you can and do it to the best of your ability when your health is not very good, when your health is like when you're sick or whatever. For example, usually when you're sick or you have like a clear health problem, your main goal and main focus is I want to become not sick.
Yes.
I want to get over this health thing. But it's only really when you're feeling somewhat healthy that you have the time and energy to start to do all the other things.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what that means is like be good to yourself is just like, yeah, just do things that are actually going to make you feel better. Cause like, and it might even like seem so obvious when you say that like that. Of like, of course I want to do things that make me feel better. But oftentimes I feel like it's not super clear that you are doing things that make yourself feel better. Cause like I even just like drinking less is one thing for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it actually, no, you're right. I don't know if it's super obvious that things aren't good for you. Like people kind of get into routines or just do things, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah, and maybe looking at the big picture too, because a lot of those things like drinking or eating food feels like it's good for you in the moment.
Yeah.
And you get the really quick dopamine hits from like these little things, but then if you can look at the bigger picture and stuff, which is sometimes harder to see.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me of one that I definitely wanted to bring up, which is like, and that I've been realizing more and more these days, is like, I can't have it all. Like there's got to be some sort of sacrifices.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are like, you can like, I don't know, it's fun to get really drunk and like go out and I don't know, just have a fun time or whatever. But it's hard to have it all, in the sense that like you also want to wake up feeling good, and you want to like do a lot of stuff, like have a productive day the next day, but you also don't want to miss out on all like the drunk shenanigans and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like sometimes you just can't have it all. And I think that's something for a lot of people that are older. They might be thinking, oh yeah, of course, that's obvious. But for me, like I am not super old or anything, but like for a lot of people that have kids especially, they're probably like, yeah, of course, like you can't have it all. Like I have kids now, I can't do this anymore. Right. I can't do that. And they're more accepting of sacrifices, because like it's just the way it is. I can't do all those things that I want to do.
Yeah, if I want to do this, I can't do that.
Yeah. And at least for me at this point, that was one that like clicked more so. Like you just can't do everything that is fun, or that's like you might want to do. It's just like you got to pick and choose, and
be dedicated to what you do want to do, and what's going to fulfill your goals, or like keep you well. Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. And and I think important you brought it up, because I don't think it's as obvious as you might think. I don't know. I'm even thinking to myself after this podcast, I should take a moment just to reflect on what
these podcasts are always good influence for me. I'll start to fall off the wagon a little bit, and then we do the podcast, and I'm like, okay, now I remember.
Well, and like what's that saying of you are who you surround yourself with, or whatever. Nice to have these conversations, because it's easy to kind of get just swept up in life, and not and just taking the time to do this podcast creates an opportunity for us to talk about these things, which I think just makes them more real for us.
That's
and
the
for our
thing,
own benefit. It's
most
nice.
people probably have the problems, like these
have
the problems, but nobody ever really talks about it, and it's nice that we get about together and we'll talk about it, because I feel like I'll like think it in my head, but it's not as real if I don't say it out loud or hear people saying it out loud in conversation. And then it resonates with me more, and then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta do this stuff for real.
Yeah, and it is crazy how like you assume, like everybody probably does have the problems like you're saying, but you assume that nobody does. And that's why it feels like bad to even bring it up sometimes, at least for me, because it's like I don't know, you feel like you're the one who isn't able to figure things out.
I think that's such a huge misconception. Everyone thinks they're the only person that's having trouble figuring it out, and I think you even get us three in the room, and we're all like, no, everyone no one knows what they're doing a lot of the time, or everyone's struggling to like find balance in life, and what to sacrifice, and how to maintain all of these great philosophies for life. It's really challenging. And like you mentioned, energy management, that's something that's kind of new in my life, is figuring out where to put my energy, even if I have 10 hours in a day, but where is my energy level, and what am I capable of doing in those hours? Whatever.
Right. And even just like having all of this get thrown at you is like maybe even a little bit overwhelming for me. And maybe it's like will come with time, and it's like an immaturity thing, but like you hear all this stuff, and it's like, Jesus Christ, like you want all these rules and stuff, you know what I mean? It's like, do this, you gotta sacrifice, you can't do that, you gotta try to do this, and
I just want to,
you should begin again. And it's like, oh my goodness.
I can feel like then your life suddenly becomes really structured and rigid, but it doesn't have to be. I think we talked about, just having kind of a foundation of what your values are and kind of what your goals are and what you want in life, and then being good to yourself.
Yeah, being good to yourself, and yeah.
Drop in the comments a way that you are good to yourself.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. Drop them in. Any comment you got. Be good to yourself. And yeah, maybe we'll put a bow on this one, wrap it up, and close it off.
Oh yeah, nice for Christmas.
Yeah, there you go. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Bye, everyone.
Enjoy. Goodbye.
Bye.